and welcome to the webinar. I'm going to briefly, in the 30 minutes I have, talk about how to be more engaging, how to keep people's attention, and this helps you have that high impact presentation. You can have great content, you can be passionate about your topic, but if you're not engaging with your audience, you risk them tuning out and the information, the important information, going over your audience's head. So how do you engage them? With engagement comes influence and comes impact. And every time we stand up to speak, we want something to happen. We want people to do something. This is influence and impact. And engagement is an important part of that. If you stand up and speak without engagement, then what you want to happen, the change you want to occur, may in fact not be effective because of lack of engagement. So good morning, everyone. My name is Peter Dew, public speaking trainer and coach, and my passion is to give you skills, strength, self-belief so that you can change the world through your public speaking. Let me launch my PowerPoint presentation and let me make a quick confession. I have a bit of a cold, a bit of a sore throat and croaky throat, and you may hear me cough. The beauty of webinars is it's non-transmissible. All right, so high impact presenting, engagement techniques for real audience connection. It's about the connection with the audience. Those of you who've been on my webinars before, you will know that I ask you to ask questions as you go. So I believe the chat box is enabled. Let me just, and yep, everyone can see any messages. I will just put in the chat box, hello, and enter, and feel free to drop any questions into that chat box. Take notes. More importantly, think about yourself and your presentation style. Think about something you've done in the past, or maybe you've got a presentation coming up. What could you do differently to be more engaging, to have greater connection with your audience? So it's not just about me talking, it's about you thinking, participating, and how can you apply one or two things, not necessarily everything I say, but one or two things you can say, aha, that's valuable. I can use that next week. That's valuable. I should have used that, or I could have used that last week. All right. So do type in questions, chat as we go. So why does engagement and connection matter? 65% of audience lose attention within that first 10 minutes. You know, they say you've got 30 seconds to make a great first impression. So really important that you connect early and create engagement. Otherwise, they're going to zone out. They're going to be looking at their iPhones. They're going to be thinking about what's for dinner tonight, or an upcoming event, or another problem at work. So engagement equals influence and impact. As I mentioned, without engagement, you won't have the impact. And the little metaphor I use is public speaking without engagement is just hot air. You're talking, air's coming out of your mouth, words are coming out of your mouth, but nothing is happening. So that's why engagement matters. All right, here's some engagement strategies. First one is start strong. Don't spend minutes and minutes and minutes on your housekeeping, on what's for lunch, on where the toilets are in the bathrooms, because I want to be engaged straight away. I want to know that I'm in the right room for the issue I'm facing and you've got the answer for me. You as the speaker have got something that I can use. So what are you going to say that's going to create relevance for the people in the room and make them sit up and say, oh, aha, I need to listen, so start strong. You can start with a story of success, a story of failure, a story of hope. Start with a surprising fact. 60% of your audience will lose attention in the first 10 minutes if you're not an engaging speaker. That's 6 out of 10, you've lost them if you are not engaging. Some other surprising fact or a rhetorical question. Imagine a world where, what would you do if you were approaching retirement and your superannuation balance was not enough? How would you handle that? Second point, set clear expectations. And this is a little bit of a roadmap. So what they're going to remember, where you're going, why it's important, and really importantly, the problem that you solve. Another way to start strong is say something controversial. There's nothing more engaging than when you say something and the hairs on the back of my neck stand up and no, I don't agree with that. And you've got my attention and I'm angry. And then you soften it and then you say, so I'm going to make sure this doesn't happen. I'm going to explain how we can avoid that situation. But you've got my attention, you've said something controversial. You may be deliberately controversial. You may be deliberately contrary. It doesn't mean you agree with it, but your opening statement grabs that attention and then you unpack it, you give the solutions, you give the outcome, and everyone lives happily ever after. So start strong with engagement. Don't spend 5 minutes on housekeeping, emergency exits out there. Start strong. You can do your housekeeping later on. Or if there's an MC or someone who introduces you, make sure that they do the housekeeping. So you're straight into content because my concentration span is not long. The starting strong, if you cast your mind back when we used to read newspapers, the starting strong is the headline of the newspaper article. I have read the newspaper this morning. The headline determines what I read and when I turn the page over. Good headline, good strong start. You've got me, I'm going to read the whole article. I'm going to listen to you. A headline that doesn't interest me, doesn't catch me, I'm going to turn the page and start thinking about something else. So, first opening, important, please start strong. Keep the energy and focus, keep it going. So this is your voice. I mentioned passion without engagement doesn't have impact, but passion is still important, and that passion in your voice. Sometimes you speed up as you get really excited. You need to allow people time to think. So the pause. And when you say something controversial, don't keep talking. Let them ferment. Let them think about it. Imagine a world where, don't keep talking. People need to then go and imagine about that world. Use of purposeful gestures. Gestures that add to what you're saying. They're complementary, not distracting, flapping gestures, not gestures that just go round and round, or those gestures I see politicians doing where they stack boxes and they take one box here, then they move that box here, then that box should be there. This box is out of place, so we're now going to move that box there. These kinds of gestures don't mean anything at all. So engagement, your responsibility is to ensure that your gestures are congruent, aligned, and add value to the words coming out of your mouth. If not, and you don't need to gesture all the time, you just rest your gestures. You just come to a resting position, ready to gesture when you need to. Maybe you've got 3 ideas you want to share with people. When you're finished, just resting position. Contrast and surprise. Surprise really helps with engagement. If you listen to comedians, that unexpected twist grabs people's attention. What surprise can you weave in? And what contrast? I spoke about the controversial start. Now contrast that with maybe your real position or the balance, or maybe you've been balanced and real all along. Why not paint the alternative, the contrast? That helps with engagement. And I've got put a twist into your story. Let me go back a slide. Remember, open with a story or a surprising fact or question. With the story, you can tell the story, it's got to make sense, but you don't have to tell everything about the story. So a little bit later on, 5 minutes in, 10 minutes in, you add another layer, another twist, another element to that story. I often start a keynote around public speaking, around my 3 heroes that are my mentors that I follow for public speaking. So Winston Churchill, his brilliant, influential speeches. James Earl Jones, the voice of Darth Vader, the wonderful vocal quality, the vocal voiceover artist that voices many adverts in the United States. And of course, Mr. Bean, and Mr. Bean, the plasticity, the ability to talk without speaking, his non-verbal communication is brilliant. They're my 3 heroes, and one's around, the influence, the beautiful language, the inspiring words of Winston Churchill. The other one's about the vocal quality, not the croaky voice I've got today, but the vocal quality, the deep tones, the pause, the pacing up and the slowing down of James Earl Jones. And then the last one is the non-verbal communication of Mr. Bean, Rowan Atkinson. That's my opening story. I then step into my story as a person who stutters. And then I talk a little bit more about public speaking and the importance of it. And then a little bit later on, I come back and say, oh, by the way, did you know that Winston Churchill used to stutter? Did you know that James Earl Jones used to stutter? Did you know that Rowan Atkinson, Mr. Bean, stutters? And the reason he did mime was to help overcome his stutter. And that is a twist. People were unaware when I use those heroes, those 3 people up front, and that little story, unaware that that they in fact also stutter, and that's part of the reason they're my heroes. There's other great voices out there. There's other influential speakers, Barack Obama. There's other great non-verbal communication people, but they don't stutter. So that's the twist. And people say, oh, I get that now. So can you put a twist in your story? You don't have to give all the information up front. Oh, and by the way, in that story, the success was short-lived. Another 12 months later, this happened. And that's your twist. Involve your audience. If you want to engage your audience, involve them. Ask questions. It can be a rhetorical question. What would you do in this situation? Just take a moment to think. What 3 strategies, I've shared 10, what 3 strategies would you use? I'll just give you 30 seconds. Just think. Quick reflection or interaction. Yeah, just take a moment to reflect on what I've said. Can you see a way forward for your organisation? Can you see a way that you can fast track your superannuation as you approach retirement? Acknowledge responses. That helps to reinforce connection. Okay, let's do a quick verbal poll. Who thinks that interest rate rises are likely to stop inflation. As they put up interest rates, people want to invest and get higher savings, so they're going to spend less. Who doesn't think interest rate stops inflation? So that's a little straw poll. It's an engagement. It's a little sort of a group activity. I sometimes start my presentation around public speaking skills. Quick show of hands. Who would be a little bit nervous standing in front of 200 people? Who'd find that a little bit nerve-wracking? Whose anxiety would go up? And of course, probably 95% of people put their hand up. Right, you're in the right room. Do some group activities. Now, if you've got a big group of 200 people, you can't, ask who in the room would like to answer this, who in the room has got 3 strategies that they would like to share. The main reason is that you risk someone taking you down a rabbit hole. You risk someone taking us off track. So how can you do group activities in a big group? Quickly turn to the person next to you. I'm going to give you 5 minutes, so that's 2.5 minutes each. List your your 3 most important learnings from today and why. And I'll tell you when to change. I'll tell you when 2 minutes, 30 seconds is up. Okay, move around the room, form into groups of 3. Work out who's person A, who's person B, who's person C. And just have a quick chat. Person A, you're to talk about this. Person B, you meant to talk about this. Person C, you then moderate and give feedback to both person A and B. So group activities. In a workshop environment, 12, 15 people, the group activity can be as a whole. So I will often give feedback on someone who's stood up and spoken. And then I'll say, would anyone else have any comments? And then after a while, I will nominate people and I'll let them know that I'm going to I'll possibly ask you to give feedback as well. Bill, what did you like about Steve's presentation? Violet, what did you like about Cheryl's presentation? And that does 2 things. It's a group activity. It keeps the group involved. But people also know that at any time I can call on a member of the audience to give feedback on what they've just seen or heard. So the chance of going to sleep or disengagement is less because they know they're part of this activity. So involve your audience, helps keeping them engaged. Structure for clarity. One main concept, one main message. Avoid information overload. That can really destroy engagement. Use simple frameworks. The PREP method. PREP stands for give your point of view, a bit of a reason, some explanatory notes, and then sum up with your point of view. Use the rule of 3. So 3 things I want to share with you. I've got 3 ideas, just 3 points. Or past, this is how it was. So in the disability field, in the past, people with disability were put in institutions. At the moment, in the future, what I'd like to see is, and this is what we're working towards, past, present, future. Avoid jargon and clutter and avoid acronyms. Acronyms can be, not everybody knows what they mean, even within the same industry. LOL, L-O-L, apparently is laughing out loud. Well, in my world for 40 years, it's been lots of love. And you would sign a letter, not that people write letters anymore, and we put XXX LOL. But apparently it's laugh out loud. So there we go. And AI, when I grew up, on a farm, it was artificial insemination, and it is still today the major way of our improving our stock, our quality and our genetics. And now AI is artificial intelligence. So avoid acronyms. If you're going to use acronyms, use the full terminology at least once, and then you can abbreviate it later on. At least people know what that acronym is. And finally, have a call to action. So engagement, and this is not just at the end, this is all the way through. So what would you do in this situation? What are you going to do after this workshop? How are you going to incorporate this into your psychological safety policy at work? So what are your next steps? What are you going to do next? Apply the techniques immediately. Ask them to apply them immediately. Don't just, end softly, so in conclusion, and hope they'll do something. So what are you going to apply? What's your number one takeaway? Turn to the person next to you. Share your number one takeaway. So now we've got a group activity and asking what our action is. Do an accountability buddy. Share your number one takeaway and your implementation strategy and your date. Exchange emails, and in a week's time, email each other. How have you done with your updated LinkedIn profile? Mine's, I haven't touched it for a while, and apparently I need to upgrade my LinkedIn profile. Invite attendees to share their experiences and promote additional training or workshops to keep the learning going. And that's what this webinar is, an additional bolt on to a workshop, to a seminar that I do, and I'll make this available to all my clients that have attended a workshop in the past. So have a call to action. The reverse of a call to action is we end with so thanks everyone. Really, really nice day. I've enjoyed it a lot. So in summary, engagement matters. Without engagement, you're hot air. First 10 minutes, you probably lose 60% of your audience. Start strong, story, amazing fact, be a little bit controversial. Keep the energy and focus going. Change your voice, non-verbal communication. Increase the pace when you need to. Allow pause for people to think. Involve your audience. What would you do in this situation? Show of hands, clarity of message, and always have a call to action. And you can have that call to action at different parts of your presentation. I'm going to stop for a moment. I'm going to let you think about how you're going to implement what I've shared with you. What's one thing you can do when you go back to work tomorrow? You don't have to do that at the end. You can do that 3 or 4 times. I generally come back from morning tea, so mine's a 1-day workshop. What have you learnt? Session 1. After lunch, what's the second thing you've learnt? And after afternoon tea, what's the third thing you've learnt? And people give that feedback. So that's call to actions, but it's also a group work or a group activity as people share and think about what they've learnt. So what have I got coming up? Workshops, I'm off to Port Hedland later this afternoon. Those workshops are pretty well done. Shepparton, for those of you in Victoria, I've still got a couple of spots, 14th of April, and then back here in Perth, 16th and 29th of April. Winning presentation skills. So this is a little bit about engagement, about structure, about non-verbal communication, and thinking and speaking off the cuff, which is becoming my most popular workshop. What do you do when you get put on the spot? You have to handle a difficult question. Someone disagrees with you. Your boss asks you for a comment with no time to prepare. Thinking and speaking off the cuff for me is one of the most ubiquitous everyday skills. Webinars, 2 coming up. Question and answer mastery. So this is just a little snippet of thinking and speaking off the cuff. How to handle those difficult and unwanted questions. And one message, real impact. And that's further information on that clarity of your core message, which I mentioned is so important in engagement as well. not scattergun, not too much information overload. What's your real core message? You know how to reach me. I welcome your comments. So my question, what are you going to do for engagement? What are you going to do to keep your audience on the edge of their seats? What one or two strategies have you taken away? So please don't just think of this as a nice, 30 minutes. Try and pick one or two things that you can implement. And here's my philosophy. What you've got to say matters. Your voice, your message, your passion, your willingness to change the world matters. So please have the courage to speak up, to share your messages and change the world one conversation at a time.